Hallelujah, Abba. We praise thee and we thank thee once again for bringing us together, for keeping us together, for keeping us with this fire for thee, to seek thee, to ask of thee, to call on thee, Father. We ask that thou would continue building up in us this desire to find thee, from now until we are actually Abba in thy presence. We thank thee for healing. We thank thee for breath. We thank thee for another day, another moment, Father, where we can share together thy word. B'Hashem Yosha. Amen.
Amen. There's a song I remembered singing from the Sunday school days way back when. The refrain was, "Oh, how love I thy law. It is my meditation all the day." Well, that's a quote. I'm going to guess that's from Psalm 119 by David. What's the law? So what we're going to talk about a little bit here today is being under the law as opposed to being under grace. This is a particular conflict, an ideological conflict, a doctrinal conflict that I've heard for many years as a kind of a head-to-head. I might think of that game from way back when called Rock'em Sock'em Robots. These two robots are like boxing and one of their heads goes, bang! It's like, okay, this guy wins. And you sit there and little kids game back before there was anything electronic. And the idea that you can sit there and punch until somebody's head poof, goes crazy. It's like, we win. We have the right doctrine because look, they couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle the truth. Their head popped. Well, is that the determining factor? So this thing called the Hebrew Roots movement, what's that about? It's about a bunch of Christians who want to go back under the law, who don't have to, who shouldn't, because we're under grace. Jesus died on the cross, and so now we're under grace. The law was nailed to the cross and done away with. So the concept, I'm now stating not a fact, I'm stating a doctrinal position, which says if you're under grace, all your sins are forgiven. So when Martin Luther said, sin and sin boldly with gusto, it's like exercise that grace. There's no law. And so when Martin Luther also was pondering the just shall live by faith, what does that mean? Who are the just? The word zadika, zadi dalit kuf, or zadi dalit yod kuf, or zadi dalit yod kuf hey, zadika, I'm just saying that's the way you spell it. It means righteous, zadik, righteousness, zadika. But it also, in the dictionary, you'll see that it means victory, deliverance, and salvation, and justice, as well as righteousness. So to say that the good guys win, yeah, but there's a bunch of movies where the good guys don't win. I mean, there was a bunch of movies where for a while in movie-making history, you might say, starting probably around the 20s or so, turn of the century, actually, when they invented filmmaking. But anyway, beginning of the 1900s, they got into really movie making, 1920s, 30s. The good guys win, yeah. And then you have to do the opposite. So then they have to have the bad guys win. And it's disturbing, but it's like, hey, if the movie leaves you feeling disturbed or feeling troubled, it's like it was effective. At least it got inside you. And then they started messing with different, you might say, elements of the genre for the different types of films. That's just making use of the medium. But what I'm saying is that the idea that good guys win, yeah, but the bad guys look bigger, stronger, tougher, ruthless, relentless, like they should win. why should the good guys win? The good guys don't reprisal. There's no reprise of, I'm going to pay you back for what you did. They turn the other cheek. So why should the good guys win? Well, as best I can tell, it's all because the word righteousness, zadika, means victory. It also means deliverance and salvation, which means that the Almighty has either, you might say, told us or promised that he'll reach in and cause a salvation, a deliverance, or that's the way the universe is built. So we were talking last week about that's just the way the universe is built. What is this thing called truth? What is this Aleph Tav thing, this is going to be an extension, today's talk, an extension of that concept. So if the good guys are supposed to win, well, that doesn't mean they won't have any trouble. That doesn't mean there won't be any conflict or scary moments of like, it looks like you're doomed. In fact, I know a number of people who literally have experiences in life where they died and then came back to life. And sometimes more than once. So it's appointed that a man wants to die and then the judgment, then the resurrection. But sometimes you die more than once. And apparently with Elijah and Enoch, you don't die. And some people say, well, you have to die. So maybe the two witnesses coming back in Revelation are going to walk around are Elijah and Enoch coming from heaven back to earth, then because they get killed and lay in the streets for 3 days and then they come back to life again. But at least they have to go through the death portal, you might say. All who come to earth have to die. Well, if Adam brought in that concept of this gate, a Sheena, Ayin Resh is a gateway, an entrance, a dalet, a door. Wasn't the ideal that there would be no death portal? A stargate to another dimension, you might call it. From death to eternal life, from mortality to immortality. So perhaps that's what Yeshua bought us by the crucifixion event. If you look in Revelation, the first 3 chapters, first chapter even, he says, I'm the Aleph and the Tav. Well, who's speaking? Is it Yahuwah or is it Yeshua? Depending on the translation of the Bible you read, it looks like one versus the other. Well, maybe they're the same guy. And it's like, boy, if you look real close at first 2 chapters of Revelation, I was just looking at the ISR, Institute of Scripture Research version. It's really difficult to believe in the Trinity if you read their translation. Because Yeshua speaks about my Elohim and my Father and your Elohim, as if he's not Elohim. But yet he gets to sit with his Father on his throne, and he was the firstborn of creation. The first of creation, that means he was created? Oh no, he's eternal. Well, that doctrine of him being eternal was developed after at least 100, if not a few hundred years of Christian ideology where they're trying to build the doctrinal foundation by which now we've got tens of thousands of permutations. But at the Council of Nicaea, there were 7 ecumenical councils. That was the first one. Constantine was overseeing it. But that's where they really had to nail down, what is it to be a Christian? What do we believe? How does this all work? And of course, they had the Holy Spirit guiding them and saints giving them counsel, departed humans that were reaching in with advice, saints' position, job. Of course, they had to determine that's the reality, and then the Protestants later said, no, that's not the reality. So you get these varying conflicts. But the point is, somebody determined somewhere along the line that the reason for the crucifixion, there might be a number of different reasons, but they determined that the reason for the crucifixion is that God gave the Jews bad laws nobody can live by. That's the Torah. He gave them laws which no man can fulfill. And then they got cursed for not fulfilling them. And then they got the ultimate destiny of burning in hell forever because there was no way out of the predicament. And then Jesus comes along and dies on the cross, so nobody has to do the law, obey the law. Whoever believes in him, because he obeyed the law, whoever believes in him gets all their sins forgiven because he was the sacrificial lamb, as it were, sacrificial offering. And so his righteousness, his goodness, his accomplishment of keeping the law, and the person who has infracted the law, who has done wrong, trades positions. So the guilty one gets the benefits of one who kept the law, and the one who kept the law, Jesus, dies, which is the punishment of the sinner. That's the replacement concept of a sacrificial offering. Now, somebody could say that's not what we believe, but it's like what I boil it all down. I spent 50 years going to church since I was a little kid, various different churches, Protestant, not Catholic or Orthodox, but not Hebrew roots. I started going to the Hebrew roots thing in 2001. But the point is, at the end of the year, but the point is, never even heard of it. The point is, no matter how the variation of the doctrine goes, the idea that the law is a bad thing, a difficult thing, an impossible thing. And then, and I've heard this preached from, let's call them Hebrew roots Messianic teachers, that Ezekiel 20:24, we've mentioned this before, Elohim says, okay, because you guys kept doing stupid bad things, I gave you bad laws that nobody can live by. And they're saying, that's the book of the Torah, the Sefer Torah. That is what Ezekiel 20:24 is referring to. Bad laws nobody can live by. If you go to the YouTube site Mountain Air 7, there's a bunch of videos that I made with some other people on there. Every week, a guy named Stu, S-T-E-W, has something that he writes up. And I put in a plug once before for him. We'll do it again here. It's not really lengthy, it'll take you 5 minutes to read it, but he just keeps going over and over and over this basic doctrine. The Torah is truth. The Torah is life. The Torah is light. The Torah is Yahuwah's word. What part of that should be done away with? And if it's true that it's eternal, then every voice telling us something to the contrary is, why, it's the adversary. It's the counter, contradict, other words, other meanings, dictionary, dictator, a counter dictator, another God, another Lord, another giver of words. And what I've tried to explain over a few weeks here is that I'm not saying the church is bad or the church is wrong. I'm not saying the church is evil. But if Yahuwah says, these are my words, don't add to or take away, don't veer to the right or left, don't change anything, then for a person, Deuteronomy 13, a prophet or a dreamer, or if an organization or an ideology to build a theological doctrine, blatantly, overtly, simply changes what he said, that is contradiction. That is unacceptable. That's wrong. That's satanic. The word Satan, Shin Tet Nun, means to go astray, to be led astray, make an error or mistake, or be deceived or beguiled, just like the Nachash, the serpent, as it's translated in the Garden of Eden. Beguiled, tricked, deceived, enchanted, coerced, whatever you want to call it. It's like, well, it's not whatever you want to call it. There's very specific Hebrew words. But see, when you look in the dictionary, sometimes you'll find 10 English words trying to tell you what this one Hebrew word is. Well, which one of those 10 is it? Or is it all 10? It's none of those. When you look in the dictionary, it's the word in Hebrew is the word in Hebrew. Now, the question is, how do we describe what that word means? And if I give you one word of a meaning, and it's like, might be that, might be close to that, but it might be similar to that. Well, then give me, like opening up a thesaurus, give me 10 other words that are synonyms that say the same thing. In the way that I do this study where I'm writing down all these different meanings, it's because if somebody said, this is the meaning of the word, Lila means night. Okay, got it. Yom is day. Okay, but then it's stop and think, well, wait a minute. Who named Lila night and the day Yom? Well, Moshe wrote about it in Genesis chapter 1, but didn't Moshe take dictation on Mount Sinai? So the question is, was anything written ever before? There was Egyptian hieroglyphs, and there was in existence, and Sumerian cuneiform, a little wedge-shaped thing you stick into clay, but there's no record of any other language being written. Some people might say, well, Sanskrit, that was over in India. Where'd they get that? How old is that? Speculation. What did Moshe write? If Moshe's called up to Mount Sinai, he's up there 40 days and nights without sleeping, without eating. What's he writing on? Was he given a parchment, a piece of lambskin, and a pen with ink? And 7 chapters before Elohim speaks from Mount Sinai, giving us the 10 Commandments, Moshe was told, write all the words of Yahuwah. How did he do that? Well, there must have been writing, unless he wrote with hieroglyphics. I mean, he did come out of Egypt, but he was a prince of Pharaoh's court, you might say, household. So he must have known different languages. He would have known the various international linkages of communication. So maybe he wrote with Egyptian hieroglyphics. Logically, I've stated this point that if the aleph as a prefix letter to a regular word means I am or I will, some words start with aleph, like the word aleph. Aleph spelled aleph lamed pei, and it means ox, or it means taught, trained, and domesticated. It means 1,000. Aleph. But the aleph of aleph lamed pei, spelling the word that way, doesn't mean I am. It's the first letters of the 3-letter word spelling aleph. But if you put aleph in front of like aleph hey yod hey, well, hey yod hey is the verb to exist. So aleph hey yod hey, pronounced ehyeh or something of that sort, is translated I am or I will be. But you see, the aleph is self-referential of the verb existing. So I exist, or I will manifest my existence however I choose to manifest it, because it's ehyeh, asher ehyeh, and that I am that I am, I will be what I will be. Asher is a straight line. So this concept that I exist, well, if you look at mathematics, the closest connection between any 2 points is a straight line. If you meander around, then it's going to be longer than a straight line between 2 points, connecting 2 points. What's the point? Well, if there's no point, there's nothing there. But if there is a point, hey, that exists. And the point between any 2 points, they say geometric thinking, you can put an infinite number of other points. So the idea is ideologically microscopic. If you put 2 points right next to each other, you can get a microscope out and look, and there's still a little space. Well, there is no space. Yeah, but the concept, see, here's where the logical concept defies what another part of our brain says it has to be this or it can't be that. The theory that becomes a theorem says the principle is in mathematics, in geometry, between any 2 points is an infinite number of other points, not just one, not just a million, a trillion, godzillion, bazillion other points, and then even more. It's a concept. Between any 2 points, you can put a bunch of other points. Well, what's then the space between any 2 points? The space between any 2 points is whatever you want it to consider it to be. So in other words, if you say, okay, between 2 points, well, they're connected by a straight line. That's the word asher. Aleph, Shin, Resh is a straight line. That's its meaning. But it also means blessed and happy, praiseworthy. Ashri, praiseworthy is the man. Psalms 1. Why should blessed, happy, and praiseworthy, 3 different words in English, mean the definition of Aleph, Shin, Resh? And then Yod, Shin, Resh, Yashar, as in Yod, Shin, Resh, Aleph, Lamed, Israel. Well, it's a derivative of Aleph, Shin, Resh, Asher. Yod and Aleph can both be prefixes, so you get Shin, Resh. Well, look in the dictionary. Shin, Resh is pronounced Sar, which is prince, but it's also poet, like a singer. Shir, Shirim, Song of Songs. So Sar, Shir is to sing. It's a bracelet chain. What's a bracelet chain got to do with a prince or a singer or a poet? So in my mind, I think, well, a bracelet chain is a delicate little, remember, my sister would go on vacation, she'd get these little souvenirs, maybe a little bracelet charm, what they called, of a place you visited. And so a bracelet chain at the end of a trip might be, hey, look, I remember when we went on this trip and we, even if you don't wear it as a bracelet chain, hang it off a lamp or something. And it's like, hey, this is just this, I remember this series of places we stopped. We went to half a dozen different national parks, say. And so then you get this little, I don't know if anybody still does that, but at least back in the 1960s, that's one of the things you did. So you go to a national park and they might have a little charm. You'd put on what they call a charm bracelet. Or maybe they sell a little felt pendant, like back sports teams had what they called a pendant, this triangular thing, and you put it up and it had the names of different places that you went or events you went to, or bumper stickers. And people just have this way of doing collections. Some people don't like collections, but a lot of people love to collect things for no particular good reason. It's like, hey, just intrigues me. So they'll get a collection of dishes or collection of flags or collection of pins, a collection of just people are built to have this thing about collections. Collected bugs. My grandfather was an entomologist, a bug professor of bugs way back when, and got some of the grandchildren, at least me, interested in, wow, those things are really curious, really interesting. And you dissect the bugs and you catch them, you get a bunch of different ones. And then why did people collect coins or stamps? Well, they're valuable. It's like, valuable to who? What are you going to do with them? You put them in a book and you don't even open them up for 20, 30 years, and you open up and go, oh, hey, I remember I got one of those. Boy, that's worth a lot. To who? Well, you got to find somebody else who's a sucker for that kind of thing, and then they'll buy it. And it's like, but it's not about necessarily its value. Why do we do that? Why do we humans think that way, to have a collection? I remember I was fascinated with bullet shells, cartridge shells once. My cousin was in Vietnam and said, wow, you got any bullet shells? And he sent me back a few. I was like, wow, it was like a gold mine. It's like, they're empty brass cartridges. Yeah, but for some reason, it just intrigued me. I was just, why? I don't know. Well, how many bullet shells should you collect? I had quite a few. I went to Knott's Berry Farm one time down in Los Angeles. This was the ultimate cartridge shell collection. They had this in this eatery, a place to eat. They had this piece of wood on the wall. Gosh, that thing was probably 12 feet long with just hundreds of these shells. And it's like, well, there you go. Somehow that cured me of having any interest of continuing this collection. It's like, I don't even care about that. I mean, those are interesting to look at, but so what? Why are people fascinated with collections? How many should be in the collection? Pick your best 3 and we're going to throw everything else away. No, you can't do that. It's like, yeah, we're going to do that. We've got too much clutter around here. Some people have a curio cabinet for thousands of things to the point where you can't appreciate any of them. Well, the distance between any 2 points is an infinite number, but it's a straight line. But asher, straight line, also means to validate, to verify, to confirm, and to authenticate. Like, this is the actual what? Praiseworthy is the man. Are you sure? Oh, yes, absolutely. This is the absolute, genuine, authentic mechanism of becoming a praiseworthy person or getting happiness. Look at Psalm 1. Who doesn't walk in the ways of the sinners and infidels and scoffers, doesn't walk, doesn't sit, doesn't stand. I think it's walk, stand, and sit with that company. But his way is to meditate. Meditate on what? The law. Oh, gosh. You mean that very law that was bad stuff that nobody can live by, that Yeshua came all the way down here from heaven. Let's just go with that story. So Yeshua is this righteous one in the heavens, the Lord, the Prince of the heavenly kingdom, King of kings. He's like, all right, I've had about all of this I can take. So he gets dressed up in an earth suit, jumps down here to the face of the earth, and gets himself crucified, impaled, beat to heck. I mean, literally, you watch Mel Gibson's The Passion, they just rip the heck out of him. Why? To get rid of that stinking rotten law. And finally, when he gets through all that, he says, okay, no more law. You guys are, who came up with that idea anyway? You did. Jesus himself is the guy who invented the law. In fact, if the Torah is the law and he's the Torah incarnate, he's the law. So when they accused him of breaking the Sabbath day, and he says, hey, you can't accuse me. I invented the Sabbath day. I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. Gosh, you can't blame me of breaking anything. In fact, everything I do is not breaking the law, so shut up. But I'm gonna abolish this stupid, rotten concept of the law once and forever. And so the great benefit of becoming a Christian is no more law. We don't have to think about the law. We don't have to do the law. In fact, if the law in the Old Testament said, do not eat pork, shellfish, catfish, fish without fins and scales, sturgeon, don't eat it. Well, that's the law. Don't eat this, don't do that. So he died on the cross. Now we can eat whatever we want. And even in, I think it's the book of Matthew, it says, there's a verse that says, by saying this, he declared all foods clean. It's like, woohoo, no more stinking law. Yeah, but wasn't he the guy that invented that law, that stated the law, that had to conduct his human business according to the law, or else he would be disqualified as being the Messiah? So that means that he came down here, had to obey the law that he imposed, which everybody hated, including himself, so he could die and do away with the law in order to, you might say, birth or beget or start a new thing where nobody has to keep the law if they believe in him who kept the law. And then my job as a believer is to wrap my mind around that story as much as possible. And if I don't, it doesn't matter, because it's not about me wrapping my mind around the law. That would be works. If the law said, believe this story and really understand it, and then you'll be saved, if that's the law and there is no law, then I don't have to really believe the story and wrap my mind around it. I just have to believe, because that's what we're told. Just believe that it works, and you go, okay, you're in. In where? Heaven, everything. Everything's yours. All the riches in glory are yours, are yea and amen in Christ Jesus. That's what's taught. And then I could go back and look at different Bible verses to prove that. Generally New Testament, but some Old Testament. Then how deluded, wrong, insane was David that he should say the words, oh, I love thy law, it's my meditation all the day. What was it that David was so enamored with? Let me go back to Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. I am that I am, or I will be that. So the word Asher is translated that. It doesn't mean that. There's a word Zayin Hey or Zayin Aleph Tav that means this, like this thing right here. Asher means that. See, it's the concept of a straight line. If you try to look at the dictionary, is the word Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, is that concept, I am blessed, I am praiseworthy, I will be. See, if you pick one English word and try to plug it into what one of the Hebrew words is, it doesn't necessarily work. So if you understand where all the English words are an attempt to tell you what the word in Hebrew means. So if I'm trying to figure out what does Asher mean, it means a straight line that connects 2 points. Blessed, praiseworthy, happy. It's kind of like the same definition as Zadika. Righteous, validated, authentic, victory, deliverance, and salvation. You can't get any better. And as a matter of fact, if you try looking at the Hebrew letters of the alphabet, it's kind of like the resh status. If you could look at each one of the letters as meaning something, well, resh means head or honorable man or exalted one. It's almost like, yeah, but he's also successful. He's accomplished the gamut, the journey, the course, the obstacle course. Who has? Well, there's 2 letters that are men. There's the Vav man and there's the Resh man. So the Vav is the common man who's put to the weapon Zion, thrown into the grave Het, or at least that's what I'm declaring. And then he resurrects Zadi and rises up to this Resh Kuf, rises up to the Resh, the Resh status after the Kuf. After Kuf means after this, it's the back of the head, Resh is the top, the face, the head, the one you see. Hey Resh means pregnant, Hey Resh means mountain. So it's, hey, look at that. So if there's a dot and this straight connecting to another dot, what does that mean? Well, how long is that line? Like we said, if the 2 dots were right next to each other, there's an infinite number of other dots that you could put in between the 2. Microscopically, you could look and see there's a bajillion number of other dots. Well, then who's to say what's in between that expanse? Well, whoever's talking. Whoever's talking can say whatever they want. They're the ones leading the conversation. So for Aleph to mean I am and I will, then Aleph represents the speaker of the communication, which turns out to be the Aleph-Bet, because the Aleph-Bet starts with Aleph and ends with Tav. And Aleph through Tav is 22 letters, which compose, at least in Hebrew, literally every word that can ever be spoken. Well, now there's 5 Sophite letters in the modern alphabet, but there's still, that's a secondary, speaking of the original 5 letters, Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pei, and Zadi. but there's still just 22 letters. So between this is my communication, and then the letter Tav, well, the letter Tav is drawn like an X, and if you're illiterate, you could just write X, and because that's your intent, and you put your hand, it's accepted, legally accepted as you wrote your signature. Well, a signature doesn't have to be right in your home language, every letter exactly what your name is. Your signature is just a sign, like a signet, that this is who I am. And I agree. I, with my own hand, or like that lady Johnny Erickson who can't use her hands, she put a paintbrush in her mouth and could paint pictures. Well, if she takes an implement in her mouth and just puts a dab on a piece of paper, there's a dot, there's a spot, there's a splash, there's a squiggle. It's with intention of my heart. I intentionally put a sign here. So they say if you were coerced to sign a contract, it's void. If somebody has a gun, sign this or else. Okay, if you're under duress, the contract is void. And all you have to do is go to court and say, look at the guy had a gun. He threatened me. I was under coercion. I was under duress. It's like, okay, then there's no contract. It's absolutely void. Legally, any contract that somebody lied, that's fraud, tricked you into something. So the way that human law works is that you have to, whoever signs the contract has to be at full disclosure of all their intentions, all the repercussions. And if they're in full agreement with each other, they can sign a contract. And then if one of them fails to keep his side of the contract, now you can take them to court and say, look, well, I didn't know, I didn't mean that. Yes, you did. That's why we both signed. So the first thing that has to be determined with any court case for a contract is, were both people upfront, honest, full disclosure, this is where you stand? Yes. Did something happen to change your mind? I don't have any money, I can't keep paying. I got in an accident, I can't keep working. Something, or you just being a jerk, and that now you're a criminal, and so now the other person gets compensation for damage. But see, this sense of legal balance, that's known as mishpat, scales balanced level. Mem shin pei tet. Pei tet means stalemate. Shin pei tet means judge. Mem shin pei tet is the place of judging balance, so it's translated as justice or right ruling. Well, the idea that this dot equals that dot, no difference. Ehyeh, straight line, not a meandering, wiggly line that does all sorts of crazy stuff and then come over here. It's just ehyeh, dot, straight line, dot. We look at those words, putting them into this graphic representation of two dots in a straight line, turns that into this concept that says, if he says something and we agree, and there's this straight yoke between us, we can each hold the other one liable in court. So if Yahweh says something that he's going to do for us, if we're his people, and he doesn't follow through, we could technically sue him in the court of, not the local county, but the court of the heavens. Yeah, there's got to be a court in the heavens. I've heard people talk about that. Imagine trying to sue Elohim in the court of the heavens, his own court where he's the judge. Oh no, he's the defendant. By golly, we've got a claim. He said that he would do this, this, and this for us, and he doesn't. He didn't live up to his side of the bargain. That's because, I don't know if anybody knows this, some people know this, if you look at a check that you get from the bank, there's a line at the bottom where you're supposed to write your name. There's just a line. You write your name. However, if you get a good magnifying glass, microscope, and you look real closely, it's not a line. It's a sentence. A sentence, it's written so small that nobody knows that it's a sentence, but I've heard it before numerous times that that's what it is. And just because you can't read the fine print or don't know you should read the fine print or can't because you don't have a microscope, well, too bad for you. You signed on top of a sentence, and now by you signing that, You're not just agreeing to pay somebody the money that you wrote on the check, but you're agreeing to what that sentence says. And you didn't even know it. But it's your own fault. You could say that's fraud. That's non-disclosure. Oh no, it was there. You just didn't read it. My point is, the more you look at the law and the trickery, the chicanery that goes on the earth, the more disturbing and frustrating it gets. But if we take this seriously and say, why did Yahuwah say the things he said? He didn't call his name Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh for no reason. In fact, when Moshe said, what is your name? He said, call me Ehyeh. That's not what he said. Moshe said, who shall I say sent me? And he said, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Tell him Ehyeh sent you. So that's a different question and a different answer. Tell them the guy who sent you, the voice that sent you was dot line dot. It's not dot line square or triangle line eyeball. It's dot line dot. At another time, Deuteronomy 6, he said, hear, O Israel, Shema Israel, listen up, pay attention. This is what you got to, this is everything right here. This is what you got to believe. This is what you got to keep as your dot. Yahuwah, your Elohim, that's the guy we're talking about, yes? Yahweh Echad. Period, end of story. What about Yahweh Echad? Aleph, Het, Dalet. Oh, okay, they're trying to tell us we should believe monotheism rather than polytheism, one God instead of many gods. That's not what it says. Yahweh Echad. Yod He Vav He, Aleph Het Dalet. Aleph Het is the word ach, which is brother. Het Dalet is the word for thin, sharp, pointed, like a thin blade of grass or a knife edge or a needle or a sliver of a moon. Het Dalet Shin is the word Chadesh or month. Dalet Shin is the word for a blade of grass. So you could say that the thin sliver of the moon, Chadesh, could be seen as like a blade of grass or like just the sharpest. So Rosh Kadesh, that's why some people think it's the first sliver of the moon. Other people think, well, Rosh is the full-blown head. So that's the full moon. So the full moon of the thing which is known for its sliverness, when it's at its maximum, that's the Rosh, so that's the full moon. Just saying that's where the contention comes from. But Het Dalet means sharp point. So Aleph Het Dalet. If Aleph is the prefix meaning I will, and Het Dalet is sharp point. Look in the dictionary, it also means one, uni, U-N-I, singular, and mono, M-O-N-O. So the number one is the thinnest mark, vertical mark you can make with your pen or your pencil, like the number one, singular, I, pronoun I. That's Aleph Het Dalet. So for me to try to wrap my mind around what's this Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, what's Echad? A dot, it's either there or it's not there. It's kind of one-dimensional. If it's not there, it's not there. But suddenly, oh, there it is. How big is it? It's just a dot. The dot just represents it's there. It's either there or it's not there. So I think of that as the most one-dimensional concept there can be. That's just what it is. There it is. It's not how big is it or what phase of the moon. Is it the full moon? Those are all complications. But the fact that it exists, that's like you go out and sight the moon and, oh, there it is. There it is. I can see the thinnest little sliver. There it is. That's kind of like Ehyeh. And then if there's a straight line, no funny business, just valid, authentic, corroborated, true, right, victory, deliverance, salvation, Zadika, boom, the other dot. To me, the understanding of that phrase, Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, must mean it is what it is. It ain't what it ain't. There's no variation. That dot and that dot are simply identical. No fluff, no bluff, no smoke and mirrors. Who he is what it is. Well, we should add some funny business to it. No funny business. Well, let's paint it. The proverbial saying, lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. Yeah, but let's dress it up. No, the straight line is a simplicity. Straight line, boom. It's not taking the long way home, sightseeing, journeying, appreciating. It's just boom, straight. So what I'm saying is that part of the way to read Hebrew is to understand the letters, understand the structure of the words, and then understand the structural of the phrasing of a sentence or even if it's just an idiom, which is to say almost like a localized jargon of, it means something to us even though you wouldn't get it. What does it mean to you? How does this fit? Does it have something to do with the local culture, local? But if somebody gets the dictionary in Hebrew and says, now I'm going to understand the language, it's like, you're not really going to understand the language. You'll understand something about the language if you get the dictionary, but you're not really going to understand it until you learn the letters, how the letters affect each other, what the letters mean. And then to spell a word, what does that mean? What does Aleph, Shin, Resh actually mean? And then if Aleph, Shin, Resh is this truth, this simple, determined, absolute, unwavering, da, there it is, da. Why is Yisrael, Israel, why is that written Yod Shin Resh Aleph Lamed? And I can say that's just the name. It's like, no, that's not just the name. It's a name that for a reason. And the only way to read that is know the difference between Yod and Aleph. If Aleph is I will, I am, and it's perfectly straight, and like Shin Resh is a bracelet chain of taking this big journey, all these events, many days, all the ideas, all the things you see, and you reduce them down to these little bracelet chain charms. Well, what's Aleph Lamed? El, Ishar El. Well, Aleph Lamed is translated God. But Allah, Aleph Lamed Hey, is to deify or deity. Aleph Lamed Hey Yod Mem in the plural, Elohim, is to multiply, but it's also to maximize. So actually, El He, Aleph Lamed Hey Yod makes it personal, my. So you've got Aleph Lamed Hey, Allah, that is used in the Aramaic, El He, Elohim, or just plain El, and they all are just translated. In Greek, it would be theos, theodor. Like if adore is to love, theodore is the love of God. But you could say, well, that's just the way words are built. Theos and Dios, D-E-O-S or D-I-O-S in Spanish, that's also God. So Dios, the A prefix is like saying to God is adios. So when somebody in Spanish is saying goodbye, they're actually saying, I'm putting you in God's charge, to God, Dios. Well, Aleph Lamed means motion toward. Aleph Lamed with a hyphen, then the other word, and you look in the dictionary, it means motion toward somebody moving, or is it the idea of taking into a regard, a motion towards this, or thinking in that direction? Is it thinking in the direction of God? Aleph Lamed also means power, strength, might, capability. You might say an aspect of fitness. Aleph Lamed. It's not just God. So what's Elohim? Is there many gods? Well, there could be many gods. I knew a guy who he was very weak. He was very emaciated, and he was trying to stand up. And he said, "Dragon power, wolf power." It's like, dragon power, wolf power, what the? He was calling on symbols of strength so he could stand up. It's like, well, that's what people do. I'm not going to judge him, but I'm certainly never going to say those words. I'll say, Yahweh, help me. But the idea is Elohim is the source of strength, source of power, source motion toward the one we look to. There's this phrase, I think it's in Isaiah, he says, Ani Yahweh. I am, Aleph Nun Yod, Yod He Vav He. Ein Elohim, Aleph Yod Nun, Elohim, Aleph Lamed He Yumin, Ein Od Zulti. Ein Od Zulti. Zion Vav Lamed, there's a word kind of broke down here a little bit. Zion Vav Lamed is Zul, and it means waste, lavish, worthless, cheap, reduced price, despised. But it's also glutton. Like, eat all you can, like going to the Golden Corral restaurant or something and say, you could just stay here for hours and eat and eat and eat and just keep eating. Why? Food's cheap. No, that's just maybe it's good food. It's just that the restaurant gives you all you can eat. But why is the same word for glutton or eat all you can the same word for waste, lavish, worthless, cheap, reduced price? It's the concept, Zion Vav Lamed, Zul, is the concept that says, this stuff is so cheap, I don't care. If you dropped a bunch of nails on the floor, you're doing carpentry work, it's like, well, pick up the nails and use them. Nah, throw them away. My labor to pick through the nails and pick them up from the sawdust is not worth it. Just grab another handful from the bag and keep working. Why? Because the nails are cheap. Now, if the nails are expensive, it's like, stop and pick them up. Separate them out from the sawdust so you can reuse them. What's its value? Well, if something is cheap or worthless, or there's no regard of it, you can eat all you want, you can throw it away all you want. That's the same word, zul, which is why you get glutton, all you can eat, but also cheap, reduced price. But if something is valuable, you're going to have a regard for it. Zult, Zion Vav Lamed, add the tav now, which is just a suffix of time. We're saying that's like past or future. It means except, besides, save, other, unrelated, or altruism. How does that fit? If you say altruism means selfless, or you have no concern for yourself, it's a concern for somebody else. That's one of the words used in the dictionary. But zulti means except or besides. So when he says ein od zulti, it's translated just as other. Aleph Yod Nun is where we get the word in English, ain't, A-I-N-T, ain't. That means it doesn't exist. And I'm saying these things just to learn the language, just the way I think and remembering certain things. Ain't od zulta. Well, od is ayin vav dalet. Ayin dalet is witness and testimony. Ayin vav dalet, used other places, means again and again, repeatedly, forcefully. There isn't any repeated zulti. But if zulti means waste, lavish, worthless, cheap, but it also means except, besides, other, unrelated. So Elohim speaking, Yahweh speaking here, and he says, there is no other Elohim. There is no other. Yeah, but what do you do with those letters? Zion, Vav, Lamed, Tav, Yod. Zion is the seventh letter, and it means just number, the word seven, Shin Bet Ayin, means to swear a vow. It means the spectacular, singular item of reference, the Zion, unlike any other. Vav is a connector. Lamed is a shepherd's staff, meaning authority or law. A set apart Zion is also a weapon to adorn with weapons, set apart law. Tav, well, that's a sign of the covenant, and Yod means my. So I could read the word Zulti as meaning a sign or the object of the covenant. Well, the covenant is expressed in words, and words are expressed in letters. So the words and letters used, the Tavs, the symbols used, words and letters or symbols used to describe my, so that's his personal lamed authority connected to the, well, if the Zion is the seventh letter, then it's Kadosh, it's Bet Dalet. It's unlike all the others, like the seventh day Sabbath is separated from all the other letters, all the other days of the week. The Messiah was designated by being adorned with weapons, that he was the one unique, special, this. The word Zion Hey and Zion Vav and Zion Aleph Tav are three ways to write the word this, like pointing arrows or putting a halo above the head or circling it and putting stars on it, or bring your attention. That's what the letter Zion is doing. So I could read the word Zulti is bringing to attention what? Well, the Vav is a connection, so it's bringing to attention Zion, the Lamed of Tav Yod, my covenant. Bringing to attention the instructions, because the word Lamed literally as a word means teach and learn, repeat again and again, forcefully. Well, that's the same as Ayin Vav Dalet. So Lamed, rehearse again and again, is kind of a synonym of Ayin Vav Dalet. And Ayin Dalet, ode, or Vav Ayin Dalet, mayod, to be ornamented by, bejeweled, witness and testimony. So if I'm plugging these as equivalents, I can see that the instruction, the law, the lamed, the authority, repeated again and again, is the bejewelment. So if David says, oh, how I love thy law, is he saying, I love it when you tell me no? This shirt, I love L.A. In Hebrew, L.A., Lamed Aleph means no, N-O, not K-N-O-W, but it means no, not, negatory, non. I love no. Is that what David is saying? I love it when he says, don't steal, don't kill, don't eat pork. I love that. Woo-hoo. Give me some more things not to do. What? What the heck is David talking about when he says, I love no? I love the law that tells me I can't do stuff. And if Yeshua died on the cross to absolve us of keeping the law, well, how can I say I love no when Yeshua, who I'm supposed to love, did away with the no? He said yes. It's all yes. Or maybe that's a complete misunderstanding of what is going on. As we said last week, if the law is the Aleph Tav, if the law, what was translated law, is actually Torah, if David didn't say, I love it when you say no, he said, I love your Torah. What's Torah? The instructions. What are the instructions? The instructions that look like, hey, Israel, if you want to be a successful Adam, praiseworthy, Asher, do this and don't do that. Don't work on the seventh day. When you say something, do it. Whether you swore by the temple or the gold of the temple or the Ark of the Covenant in the temple, that your yes be yes and your no be no. And don't eat that stuff. It's not really food. Real food is clean. That stuff ain't food. Don't eat things that are toxic. It'll destroy you. It'll abominate you. It'll pollute you. And then you'll get sick. You'll go nuts. And you can only blame it on yourself for eating those things. Well, then that means by saying, oh, by saying this, he declared all food's clean. All food is clean. That's not food. It's a trick. It's a trick. We've been tricked by replacing the meaning of words. So when David said, I love your Torah, why? Read Psalm 119. We'll get into that shortly in another couple weeks from now. We'll go through Psalm 119 again. But the point is, we were told that Yeshua nailed the law to the cross and did away with it. That's not true. Paul said something about that he nailed the curse of the law. Well, what's the curse of the law? Death. The law says do this and don't do that or else you'll die. Well, then the curse you get for doing that is death. So somehow he nailed death itself to the cross, meaning he did away with the finality of eternally separated from the Elohim of life in order to restore us the promise, the option of living if you choose life. But see, it was turned into nailing the law to the cross. That's a deception. So if I look at Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh and say who he is, what he is exactly who he is, what he is. And if Aleph is the prefix that says I am, I will, and Tav is the finality, the conclusion, then in between Aleph and Tav is the communication. Well, the word spelled Mashiach, Mem Shin Yod Het, translated Messiah, is also defined as the anointed one. But the word Shin Yod Het literally means conversation and communication. So the conversation, the communique, if Aleph says, I am, I will, he's now communicating because he's saying, I am, I will, what? It's these other 20 letters until he gets to the conclusion. So the expanse that he determined between the Aleph and the Tav is the conversation, is the communication. The word Ruach, Resh Vav Het, literally means expanse. It means the distance between. If you look at Resh Vav Het, space, interval, aired, to put air between, ventilated, it's like HVAC, heating, ventilating, air conditioning. Spacious, space of time, wide and large, gave relief, the air between two things. Wind, breeze, breath, soul, spirit, mind, disposition, courage, evil spirit, profitable, spiritual and mental. All that's the definition of the word Ruach. So the Ruach is the mind or the space between the Aleph and the Tav. The mind of what? The concept being communicated between the Aleph and the Tav is literally the definition of Ruach. And if the one speaking Aleph is Elohim, who is Kadosh, then the meaning of the 22 letters as a fixed interval with 20 factors between the Aleph and the Tav is literally the definition of Ruach HaKodesh, or the Kadosh, Ha meaning the Kadosh mind, will, purpose of communication. So the Ruach HaKodesh is the meaning of the 22 letters. And that's just, you might say, call it simple logic. So Torah isn't the punishment. For somebody to say Yahweh gave the Torah to Israel, Ezekiel 20:24, bad laws nobody can live by. It's not true. The Torah is a description of propriety, which is conventional correctness, appropriate, fitting, suitable. So Elohim is saying in his Torah, who I am is, I've invented this thing called truth, called Zadika, victory, deliverance, salvation, mercy, kindness, grace, rechem, ken. And if you want to be my people, he says in Leviticus 19:2, I'm kadosh, so you need to be kadosh. Don't eat these things, it'll abominate you. If you want to be my people, don't eat those things. If you want to be my people, you got to be about truth. If you want to be my people, you got to be about justice and mercy. Zadika. And you win. But you have to be like me. So here's these 22 factors, which are my stuff, my ornamentation, my collection. My collection is these 22 things. Not hundreds of more. It's these 22 factors. That's my collection. And so I'm thinking that the fascination humans have with a collection is because we're somehow drawn to this bejewelment that Yahweh gave himself. These 22 elements. Yeah, but what are they? The word rachav, reshchet bet, means wide, broad, spacious, roomy, enlarged. It's where you get the word Rahab, Rahab the harlot. Well, the word harlot, as we said before, is Zion Nun Hey, but Zion Nun and derivatives of Zion Nun is where it means to feed, to nourish, Zion Vav Nun. Zion Vav Yod, remember, Nun can be a suffix of putting something into action. So Zion Yod Vav Tav Nun means bright, splendid, comely, imposing, radiant. Zion Yod Vav Nun, that was Zion Yod Vav Tav Nun. Zion Yod Vav Nun, Zion. The word Zion is spelled with a zadi, similar in sound to Zion, but Zion Yod Vav Nun, Z-I-O-N, means arming, weapons, adornment, ornamentation. That's where you get Xena, the warrior princess. But see, Aleph or Ayin Dalet Yod means ornamented, adorned, bejeweled, eddy. Ayin Dalet, Moed Im, Moedi are the objects of my ornamentation, or the implements of my weaponry. That's the Moedim. Not to the Christian church, no, to the Jews. The weaponry, the adornment, the bejewelment is the Moedim. That's the language. But it's also witness and testimony of what? Of identity. The fact that you can see the Moedim giving the letters meaning and place in sequence order is this astounding decryption of this code. That's the Mishkan pattern. And to say Zulti, Ein Od Zulti, there is no other God but me. That's the way it's translated. But Od, there isn't any Ein Vav Dalet, there isn't any other repeatedly, forcefully, a witness. There is no other witness and testimony except the Zion Vav Lamed Tav Yod. There's Zion Vav Lamed Tav means except or besides or save or only this. There isn't any other Elohim. There isn't any other witness and testimony except the unique, the Kadosh, the set apart Zion Lameding of Tav Yod, of my letters. The only witness and testimony that's set apart sacredly to be investigated and determined is my covenant instructions. It's the only thing there is. That's how I read the word Zulti. I know Zulti. There isn't any other. There isn't any other source of power or strength, Ein Elohim. But it's translated, there is no other God. There is no other. There's no other God. Monotheism. It's not about monotheism. Well, it is about that. You could read that. But what he's saying is, don't look anywhere else except for, yeah, but Zul means waste, lavish, worthless, cheap, reduced price, despised. That's right. The very thing that was despised is the source of all truth. The meaning of these 22 letters. I'm at 1:21. Carla, are we at the end here? Should I take a break?
If you like to finish your thought, go ahead. No, we're at 109.
Okay, well, that's right about an hour. So let me just say this, is that the concept of what does any sentence mean of any verse? And that Revelations 7:14 that I was reading last week is just like, how do you get this? And the regular translations get that. And it's like, it's all how you see the words. So what I'm trying to say is Zion Vav Lamed, waste, worthless, cheap, despised. is also exactly the opposite. Zion Yod Vav Nun, Zion Vav Yod, brightness, radiance, splendor, glory. What is the splendorous glory? The Lamed of Tav Yod. What's Tav Yod? Yod suffix means my, and Tav is terms of my covenant. But every letter is a sign, a mark, a symbol that can be taught and learned of how to read as the instruction for life. So when David says, I love your Torah, show me the things that are in there, he wasn't saying, I love, no. He's saying, I want to know. I love the fact that in your Torah, you've actually described what works and what doesn't work. Where if we do this, it'll be successful, Zadika, victory, deliverance, and salvation. And if we mistakenly don't do that, we're in big trouble. We're doomed. So when he thought, I'm convinced David didn't do the thing with Uriah, take Bathsheba and have Uriah killed because he consciously knew he was doing wrong. Somehow he tricked himself, deceived himself, fooled himself into thinking that he was the king and it was still okay. And he pulled a fast one. I didn't kill him. The enemy killed him. And it's like when the prophet nailed him saying, you're the guy, he was like, oh, gosh. He was suddenly given a moment of his heart. And he realized, I've completely blown it. Completely. How could this happen? And that was a complete breaking. That he wasn't just callously doing it because he was the king and could do it. Somehow that's what happened. The point of this, and then I'll take a break, is to bring this up in Revelation. Revelation 3:8, talking to the seven churches here, Yeshua says, you have guarded my word and not denied my Shem, my name. You have guarded my Debar and not denied my Shem. What is the word of Elohim and what is the Shem of Elohim? That's the question. Revelation 2:3, you have labored for my name's sake and not become weary. You have labored for my Shem, for the regard, for the sake of my Shem. What is his Shem? Revelation 2:13, you hold fast to my name and did not deny belief in me. Again, how do you hold fast to his Shem? Translated name, but it's not just name. What's this Shemness? Revelation 2:26, you guard my works. Well, it's not by works, lest any man should boast. No, he mentions works a few times. So here's the question. What are the works of Elohim? What is the word of Elohim? What's the Shem of Elohim? Revelation 3:10, you have guarded my word. That's Old Testament. There was no New Testament at the time this was written. Revelation 6:9, the word of Elohim and the witness which they held. That's what this group of people is regarded for keeping the regard of the word of Elohim. What word? Is it the 10 Commandments? Is it, here's a list of all the sacrifices you have to do? Oh, it was Yeshua. Yeshua's the word. It's not about that. If Yeshua is the human incarnation of the Debar, the word of Yahweh, the Amer, Aleph Mem Resh, Dalet Bet Resh, that's basically word. Mem Lamed Lamed is to speak or utter. Bet Tet Ket, I think is also word to be assured. But Hey Bet Tet, that's the word for utterance. Anyway, there's a few different words about talking, about speaking, but this concept of Debar, to make a stipulation, to speak, to say, to utter, that's a Debar. You see that in Revelation, the first 4 chapters is all about those who have the regard of the Debar of Yahuwah and his Shem. What is his Shem? Oh, it's Ehyeh. Oh, it's Yahuwah. No, those are words that says he causes to exist. The word Shem can mean here or the word there. Where he's at. Where's he at? These 22 letters. That's where he's at. What did he say? What did he speak? it can be composed by the 22 letters. I'm not trying to make anything up, and I'm not trying to run with my own stuff, but for nearly 70 years now of trying to figure out who is Yahuwah, who is Elohim, what did he say, what does it mean, all I can see is his word and his Shem can be deciphered in these 22 letters. And that's the stuff that group wearing white is holding to. That's the stuff that he's complimenting the various 7 churches, assemblies, kahalim, for in Revelation 2 and 3. And if it's not this, then what is it? I got to take a break. I'll be right back.